Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome to our Library 2.0 mini conference, Banned Books and Censorship. This is our opening keynote session. Special thanks to the founding conference partner, San Jose State University's School of Information. At this time, I'm going to turn over time to Dr. Sandra Hirsch and Dr. Anthony Chow from San Jose State. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. And hi, everyone. I am Sandy Hirsch. I'm the Associate Dean for Academics at the College of Professional and Global Education at San Jose State University. And on behalf of San Jose State University, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this Library 2.0 conference focused on banned books and censorship, current intellectual freedom issues in the library. As we have all been hearing, every day we're hearing about the growing difficulties that schools and libraries are encountering in terms of challenges to books that are in library collections or in our learning environments. And this is, the topic of today's mini conference. It's going to focus on these very important trends in censorship, and we're going to be discussing some of the solutions for how to promote our principles in these very, very challenging times. I want to especially thank our partner, Martin Garnar, who is the director of the Amherst College Library. I've known Martin for a long time. He's been a leader in the intellectual freedom space for many years, and we are absolutely thrilled that he agreed to work with us to put together this important mini conference today. We're also really grateful to him for organizing this outstanding opening keynote session with this spectacular set of speakers who we're going to be hearing from very shortly. San Jose State University iSchool is proud to sponsor this important discussion, and I look forward to learning about the latest developments related to banned books and censorship, and also having the conversation around possible strategies for how we can better navigate these challenging situations. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Anthony Chow, who is the director of the San Jose State University School of Information.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. It's good to see you. My name is Anthony Chow. I'm the director of the School of Information at San Jose State University. Thank you for joining us at this important event as we gather together to fight for the freedom to read freely and also to protect our right to intellectual freedom. As a member of the Asian American community and the father of a non-binary child, I know firsthand the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and sharing with others the beautiful diversity of being and how essential stories and high quality content contributes to learning how to live together peacefully and respectfully. My cousin, a well-respected and high-profile attorney in Chicago, was recently spit on and called anti-Asian names in the middle of a busy sidewalk. That was yesterday in New York City. Like many of you, when I'm faced with a challenge, a large part of me embraces it, relishes it, so that I am ready, and events like today will further empower me and us to fight the good fight. As the largest and most diverse MLS program in the nation, our iSchool stands with all allied professionals ready to protect the foundation of our democracy, so we can continue to serve with all of you as a beacon of knowledge, acceptance, and power of free thinking and open access to information. On behalf of the School of Information at San Jose State University, a hearty welcome. And I hope you have a transformational time with us today. Our motto here is information is everything. Thank you. Martin, Steve?
Let's go straight to Martin.
Thanks so much for your introductions, and I'm so glad to see everybody here. I'm love seeing all the hellos in the chat, and especially the students who have joined us today. And greetings from a smoky New England, where our air is just unhealthy and not very unhealthy as it was yesterday. I'm hoping that everyone is staying safe during these troubled times. And so I'm really pleased that we have our panelists joining us today. I'm going to give brief introductions, and then we really are going to jump right into the questions, because we want to make sure that we have as much time as possible to hear from these experts and to set us up for the presentations that are following. And so I'm pleased to welcome Andrea Jamison, who's an assistant professor of librarianship at Illinois State University, Lesliediana Jones, associate director of the Harvard Law School Library, Emily Knox, Associate Professor in the School of Information Sciences at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Shannon Oltmann, Associate Professor in the School of Information Science at the University of Kentucky. And Sophia Sotilleo, who's Dean of the Thurgood Marshall Library at Bowie State University. So thank you so much, panelists, for joining us. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our first question, which is, what are the biggest trends you're seeing when it comes to attacks on intellectual freedom? Andrea, we're going to start with you.
All right, thank you. So I think there are multiple trends associated with attacks on information freedom. We all know that the American Library Association, their Office of Intellectual Freedom, has been tracking the uptick in book challenges. And the majority of these challenges are not seeking to just limit access to book titles. Challengers are being emboldened, and they are seeking to remove titles entirely from library shelves. And I think one of the biggest trends is that it's very clear who's being attacked in these censorship efforts. So if you looked at the data that was reported by the American Library Association, most of the books that were aimed at being banned or removed from library shelves were books that were representative of the African-American experience, either critical race theory or Black Lives Matter, or books that represent the LGBTQ plus IA community. And coupled with that, I think another trend is that is what we're seeing happening at the school library level, where you just have a lot of librarians, particularly school librarians, not only are they being threatened physically with violence, but you have librarians that are losing their jobs because some administrators are trying to avoid parental conflict. And I'm sure it's out of fear of backlash, but they're caving into the demands of parents who feel that certain books do not have a place, or certain groups do not have a voice on our library shelves or even within society. And I think that's establishing a dangerous precedent, whereas they are allowing the demands of a few to suppress the rights of many. And once you start down that road, it becomes a slippery slope, and we have to ask ourselves, where would that end?
Thanks, Andrea. Lesliediana, what do you think?
I'm going to pick up where Andrea went into. So I think she made some very, very good points. And where I'm going to go with this is a dangerous trend that seems to be permeating the country is the legislation that is happening in many states, particularly if we look at what's happening now in Arkansas. Arkansas has a law that will criminalize library workers, not just librarians, library workers that circulate material that's deemed indecent. And the legislation is what I would call cookie cutter legislation. So Arkansas has put together this act that they have passed, but other states are taking it and they're copying it. And they're seeing how things play out in some of the states like Arkansas and some others, that to see if this legislation, quote unquote, sticks. If it works there, then perhaps it'll work in my state. And so I'm very troubled by the criminalization that is going forth. And in the past, librarians, library workers, and I'm going to use that writ large, library workers were exempt for circulating materials, because that's essentially what they're doing, just circulating materials. And the term indecent can be interpreted many ways. So this legislation is overbroad, and it's unconstitutional, and it's being fought. So there are, one of the organizations I belong to, in addition to ALA, is the Freedom to Read Foundation. And that's the litigation arm of ALA. And they are fighting this in the courts. And this is going to happen all over the country. So in regards to, yes, all of the things that are happening and the groups that they're targeting, now they're going overbroad and attacking library workers, and I should add also booksellers. themselves. So it's really troubling that this has taken such a political slant and it's gaining momentum all over the country.
Thanks, Lesliediana. Emily, what are the biggest trends you're seeing?
So I guess following up from that, I'll just emphasize more that the attacks on library workers themselves. It used to be that these were attacks on institutions, I would say, like the library, the school, the curriculum, but now the attacks are on teachers, librarians, people who work in libraries. They are quite personal. They are saying that you are a bad moral character if you offer particular books, or you have certain things in your classroom library, or you have things in the curriculum. So that is something that's quite new and is a trend that we haven't seen before to this extent that we're seeing it right now.
Thanks, Emily. Shannon, what are you seeing?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to mention two trends following on the great points already made by my co-panelists. The first is the reach of national organizations. In the past, challenges would often be generated locally, sort of organically. There might be one or two books here, maybe in another state, it might be different books, but now we're seeing these national organizations with local chapters sharing information about books, sharing strategies and techniques and tactics about how to get books removed. And these organizations have a national reach. And I think the rapid spread of information and misinformation about books is a new trend. The other thing I want to highlight, I think we're seeing a trend about a lack of compassionate communication. In the past, librarians were encouraged to sit down with the challenger, explain the reasoning for having this book, explain the importance of this book. And we were encouraged to have a dialogue and engage, right, with our community members. I'm not sure that's going to be a successful tactic with this new wave of book challenges that we see. I think there's a lack of desire on the part of challengers to want to have those meaningful, thoughtful dialogues. And that really changes the game in my mind.
Thanks, Shannon. Sophia, what do you want to add to this conversation? What trends are you seeing when it comes to attacks?
Yeah, I think the trends that I'm seeing that concerns me, along with my panelists, all that were listed there, which is really sad to know that there's such a long list. But I'll add the fact that boards, board of trustee groups, school boards, any group of individuals that have some level of discomfort for a particular group, or just a discomfort for information that's being shared, I'm seeing this large trend. And we're showing that there's not enough research to help us or help guide us to really working with these groups. So if any parent comes and just says to a board, or even a friends of libraries and public spaces, that there's something they don't like, or a list of books, they can automatically go and advocate on behalf of those requesters that are wanting to challenge. So this trend of any board bringing up something to be challenged or removed, such as, board of trustee groups or school board groups or friends of library groups, is a trend that concerns me a great deal.
Thanks, Sophia. There is indeed a lot to be concerned about, and it's no wonder that so many people are talking about this. I don't think I've ever seen so much popular engagement with the topic of banned books and challenges. Many of it, we've all been working in this field for a long time talking about this, and now people on the street know what we mean when we say banned books, which on the one hand, oh good, they know what we're talking about, but I just wish that this wasn't such a popular topic. So Lesliediana had mentioned some of the legislative trends that were concerning her. And so I just want to narrow in on that a little bit and open it up to the panel. Of the bills that you've seen being proposed and passed, what are the ones that are sticking out to you that have caught your attention? I know we've been seeing in the chat a lot of folks talking about the stuff that's happening in their states that's scaring them. And so I just want to open it up to the panel. What are the things that you're seeing legislatively that are really giving you pause? And whoever unmutes first gets to talk. Lesliediana.
I'll speak to one. I already spoke to one in Arkansas. So, and also I'll let others speak. But another one that's concerning to me is Texas. I think is SB Bill 900. And that is a bill that is going to force any seller, any bookseller, any in the educational market. As we know, Texas has a huge educational market. It's a huge market for educational booksellers. And this law will force those booksellers to rate books. Now, you know, if they're going to have to rate books in a market as big as Texas, they're not going to take that rating away when they sell it in Michigan or they sell it in Massachusetts or California. That rating is still going to be on that book because just business. It's going to cost money for me to then rate and then derate it when it's going to another state. So what we're concerned about, or what I'm concerned about, is the ripple effect that this will have. It's a law in Texas, but it's going to have a ripple effect in other states who will be forced, their educational markets will have these books that are now rated, and this will add more ammunition to those who want to ban certain books anyway. Oh, well, this book has a particular rating, even though I'm in California, I'm in Wyoming, or whatever state. They're going to use that as a tool when it's not a law in their state, but it's an effective tool that is now permeated in other states and in other markets.
Yeah, I'll follow up from Lesliediana, and I think the one that concerns me the most as well, legislative wise, and I don't know the bill number because they've come in different, based on the state, they've come in different ways, but those internet challenges, those internet bills, legislative bills, because now they're tapping into the streaming aspect as well. So now those same bills that are being passed, even allowing or even testing Netflix and all those other streaming aspects that do have educational resources that are used by teachers and different groups to reach different types of communities. So all of those bills that really challenges the internet access and opportunities to use the internet to reach our communities are being challenged. And we already know that internet is a challenge because of certain areas still not even having full access to. So if they're already challenging that, by the time those communities get internet, it's already blocked additionally. So those particular bills and legislative bills that are coming, dealing with the internet access concerns me a great deal.
I'm really concerned about the implications of these bills because these bills are either implicitly or explicitly targeting books about the queer community, about people of color, about social injustice. It is creating an implication that those topics shouldn't be discussed in schools, those topics shouldn't be in public libraries, those topics shouldn't be discussed in our communities, in our social settings. People of color, queer people are everywhere, and they belong in our society. And I think these bills are trying to create an atmosphere of unbelonging or discomfort for these groups. And I think that's, to my mind, that's really problematic.
I think I take a different approach, just slightly, although I agree with all of the bills and the comments about the bills that have been discussed by my panel cohorts. And I agree that they are very problematic, but I'm not too concerned about any legislation that's being proposed. And I say that as an African-American cisgendered woman living in America, a country with a foundation that has been rooted in hate and extremism. So I'm not surprised by these tactics or these types of tactics. And I think as librarians or library workers, we should not be surprised. I think that at the same time, there has been a history of successful movements that have aggressively fought against systemic oppression that continues to persist in this country. And I think given that history, what concerns me most is that there are still too many people in this society that's being reactive as opposed to proactive about what's happening in society. So what concerns me more is that there's not enough legislation being proposed by advocates and allies to counter the attempts of what Michelle Alexander discusses in the book, The New Jim Crow, as an attempt to use laws to try to codify discriminatory practices. So that being said, as a librarian, I think that we have to really get in front of this type of legislation and become more vested in policymaking or thinking about how we can advocate more for policies that really protect the values that we hold dear within this profession and our professional responsibilities. And so while we do have states like Texas and states like Florida that are aggressively trying to pass these bills that continue to oppress communities, I think that we need to mimic what's happening, and I'm very proud about this, in states like Illinois, where you have House Bill number 2789, which proposes to protect library systems against book banning and users' right to read. So I think we just need more activism and getting in front of this legislation.
So I think I'd say two things. I'm actually, I'm also in Illinois, and I'm actually a little concerned about the bill. I think it does some good work, but my worry is how the bill will be interpreted. That's really my main concern. Excuse me. So what I've been saying to people is that if you really want to support your library or your school, give them more money. That's actually what you should do. Is that's the best way to show that you support those institutions. So I guess I was a little disappointed that there wasn't money attached to the bill, because to me that is what matters in a capitalist system. But the other thing I would say is I'm worried about the chilling effect of these bills. That who wants to be a teacher, right? Who would want to be a teacher in Florida right now? I could not in good conscience recommend that somebody do that. I would not recommend that any of my students who are my advisees in my doctoral program go to Florida State or any of the other schools there if they have for a tenure track job. I'm being completely honest about that. Would I recommend a librarian go down there? I mean, I know that there are jobs, but that is taking a risk, that seems to me to be the main outcome of these bills, is to really put pressure on the teaching and learning professions, which already were under pressure. And they're able to do this because these are feminized professions. I think that so much of this is wrapped up in these issues, and I am just worried that there just won't be anybody who wants to teach there, right? The people who are there are people who have been there, but people are leaving. I just don't know what will happen. And in some ways that's the point, right? To make it a pressure people not to go into these professions, because learning should happen at home. But that's really what I'm worried about with these bills.
Emily, to your point, in Oklahoma, they were having this teacher shortage, and they passed an emergency provision bill. I don't know the exact details, but anybody with a bachelor's degree who took some preparatory training was allowed to become a teacher for a semester or a year, something like that. So you had people who were wildly unprepared for the classroom, did not have classroom management skills, did not know how to conduct lesson plans, these sorts of things being thrown in classrooms. And I think it goes to one of the ultimate goals of, the destruction of public institutions. This is something Emily's talked about a lot, but I think that is one of the goals, one of the end goals of some of the organizers behind book challenges. Public schools, public libraries, other public institutions should feel like they're under threat, because I think they are.
So speaking of those folks who are under threat, we have library workers are seeing levels of stress and feeling under attack in ways that many of them have never seen in their careers. So what are some ways that we all can best support library workers, especially those who are on the front lines?
I think first and foremost, we have to make sure we have some safe spaces for them to come forward. Because if they're already afraid of what their community, whether it be public, school, whatever areas are threatening them, they may be afraid to come forward to let anyone know what's happening. So we have to create these safe spaces for them to come and share. And I really liked what Emily shared about making sure we put our money where our mouth is. We can say all that we want to help, but how are we going to help? How are we truly going to be there to assist? So all of those programs and grants and spaces where money can be put to help challenge and fight some of the things that are happening to help support these workers are some of the areas that really I would like to see supported even more, because these challenges are coming more at these workers. We definitely, within those safe spaces, mental health professionals, people they can go to, maybe at no cost. Again, these safe spaces are truly needed so that we can work with them and be there for them. We have to make sure that the doors are open to hear them and then help them once we've heard their needs.
There is a mention, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Thank you. There is a mention that Andrea said about being proactive. And I'm thinking about what the chilling effect and putting your money where your mouth is. I'm thinking about all of that. And one of the things too is, and it's just like you said, Martin, now people seem to be more aware of banned books. It's not a foreign topic like it has been in the past, but there are still a large segment of the population who don't have a clue. They have no idea what's going on. And when you tell them about it, they're shocked. So there is some proactiveness that's needed on our national organizations for that part. And also too, within most of the states have a state organization. I've attended the meetings where the state or intellectual freedom committees get together. They have a meeting every month. So I'm seeing that on the ground, so at the state level. So we have the national level, but we also have at the state level, people, organizations or associations who are ready to help. So we really have to make sure that the workers know that it's available, because some of them do not. They are not aware that they have a state organization, a state association who they can call on, if for nothing else, to say, what should I do? Where can I go? What are my resources? What are my avenues? So we need to be both at the national level and the state level to be more proactive, reaching out. We can't just sit back, because it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. And so we have to get out there and put our money where our mouth is and start reaching out to the workers who are out there, because they're going to need our help at some point.
Lesliediana, I want to play off what you said about reaching out to the workers. If you're not a school or public librarian, or if you're somebody who's not yet facing challenges, you can still contribute to this battle. Reach out to your local librarians, tell them they're doing a good job, thank them for their work, volunteer at the library, talk to your neighbors, your friends in different social groups about the value of the library and the value of having diverse resources. This is so simple to do. I was at a restaurant one time and they were having a fundraiser for a local drag queen group. And the drag queen group wanted to do a story hour, and the people I was waiting with said, drag queen story hour, what is that? And they started to get all huffy about it. And I just stood up and explained what it was and explained the value of it. I don't know that I changed their mind in 10 minutes, but I gave them something to think about, and I gave them a different perspective. Not to toot my own horn by any means, but we can all be brave for our libraries and our fellow librarians, and talk about the value of libraries, the value of the work that we're doing.
I definitely agree with both Shannon and Lesliediana. I think the best way to support frontline workers is to not let them bear the burden of advocating for intellectual freedom alone. I think that if we as librarians believe that there are core values, if we believe in those core values that are central to the work that we do, then I think that we need to bear some responsibility in advocating for that. And just like Shannon said, we may not all be able to advocate in the same way, but we all have to be committed to doing something. And so I tell my students, if you don't feel comfortable being a spokesperson, then you can be a letter writer, you can get involved with policy, you can seek to help educate people. I think libraries, we have to do a better job at being transparent and letting people know what our professional obligations are, and the role that we play in making sure that we are ensuring the intellectual freedom for all of our patrons. And I also agree with Lesliediana, there are organizations that will do some of the heavy lifting for us. So even if you are afraid to support publicly, you can make anonymous phone calls to some of these organizations to let them be aware of some of the actions that are taking place that seek to undermine the values that we are obligated as librarians to protect. I don't feel that as librarians, that libraries are neutral spaces. If we are supporting the tenets of democracy, it must be democracy for all or absolutely democracy for none. I don't believe in negotiating with terrorists or people who engage in terrorist-like tactics. And I think, and because I've been in this profession for a while, I am more willing to put myself out there to advocate for students, to work with students and to mentor them who are coming up. I think that as libraries, we have to start reaching across the profession where we're not just thinking that I'm here as a school librarian and you are in academia and you are in law, in public, and we're separate spaces. No, we're one space, right? Working for the same end goal. And I think that we need to start unifying the same way that the censors are unifying to upend the rights of individuals. We have to unify to protect those rights.
Yeah, this is Emily. So I'm going to mention a few of those organizations. So first, there's the Freedom to Read Foundation, which is the legal arm of the American Library Association. Please get involved. Anybody can join the Freedom to Read Foundation if something comes up in a legal avenue. That is where the legal briefs will be filed from the American Library Association. I would also recommend National Coalition Against Censorship. I'm the board president, I should disclose. So we do a lot of work on the Kids Right to Read program. And I recommend taking a look at some of the things that are offered there. What I'm recommending a lot of people do is please just report. Just do not worry about whether or not it seems like it's worth reporting or whatever. Those of us who do this research will figure that out later. It's easy to report to the American Library Association, but you can also report to the ACLU, to Penn, to every library. Just report it. We will worry about the data later. I also recommend everybody read a banned book. There's a list of 850 out of Texas. Buy Amanda Gorman's book. Like, there are so many books out there. Just pick one, support that author. Finally, I really try to get people to think about what is best for them. This takes a toll on people's mental health when they go through challenges like this. Make sure that you know who you can call on personally to talk to. And if you do need to talk to someone somewhere else, just pick up the phone. There will be people out there to support you. Please do not feel like you have to go through it alone. I do have one more thing, which is that I think sometimes academic librarians think that they may be left out of this. I do not think that will be true. I suspect that in some of these states, the legislators and groups are going to come for public academic libraries. And I really call on academic librarians to be prepared for how they would respond to the various materials in their collections.
Yeah,
I
Emily.
want to add a little piece to what Emily said about academic librarians. Oh boy, that went through my mind, because somebody might look, and I'm going to call myself, just as use myself as an example. Somebody might say, oh, she's at Harvard Law School. What do you have to do with this? They're not going to touch her. I mean, that's not part of her world, but it is part of my world, because, and your world, any academic librarian out there who may be public, private, it doesn't matter, because you are a librarian. Because guess what? Many of you probably use your public library. You're advocating for your public library. You're advocating for someone in your community. So don't think that just because you're an academic that it's not going to touch you. Even in my book, it does affect. And also too, like Emily said, there are so many organizations out there that need your work with them, that need your help, work with them. So there are ways that you as a librarian, just on the strength of your profession, should come forward and help us.
I thought of a few other things I forgot to mention. I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but you can run for city council, for your library board of trustees, for your school board. You can, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can contact your city councilors or your school board members and say, hey, this library is important. I value it. I'm a taxpayer. I want it around, and I want diverse resources. If you don't feel comfortable with that, talk to your neighbor about it. There are different levels of support and engagement you can do depending upon your comfort level. But again, let's step out of our comfort zone a little bit, because there are people on the firing line, right? Let's get out of our comfort zone and do whatever we can to protect those people on the front lines.
I just want to highlight another group resource that was posted in the chat, and that's the Merit Humanitarian Fund, of which I'm a past trustee, and I think we have some other past trustees on the panel right here. And it's a group that actually provides direct support to library workers who are facing financial difficulties because of their defense of intellectual freedom, or because of discrimination based on who they are. And so that's a place where people can apply for funds. And we talked about the importance of funding libraries. And this is a way that you can also fund library workers, is by donating to funds like that provide direct support. And for folks who have a hard time thinking about contacting city council, I want to share an idea that one of my library staff had, which was to send postcards to the libraries that have been targeted in the news and having a hard time, and just sending out little notes of support and love. I received a couple of those a couple of years ago, and they really make a difference. And so if you have a hard time talking to your elected officials, just send out a postcard to one of your colleagues. So, a lot of the concerns that we have people challenging books for, it's about concerns about content. We talked about in the latest rush, we're seeing a lot of concerns about anything related to the experiences of people of color in the queer community. And we've also heard mention of some of the different types of libraries that we're thinking about. We have a lot of academics are represented on the call here. We're seeing a lot of these challenges in public and school libraries. But ultimately, challenges are coming because there are folks who think that maybe you shouldn't have access to that book or to that idea in a library. And so I want to pose the question to this group and see, are there limits on speech that are acceptable in a library context? And does it matter what kind of library it is. Does it, if you're an academic library or a school library? So I want to throw that out and say, where do we have limits on speech? Because we do have some.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, Emily, please lead it off.
So libraries should always keep their mission in mind. Different types of libraries serve different types of people. So I saw someone in the chat mentioned Ashheim, selection, not censorship, or I think that's right. I think I put it in the right order. Always think about, why do you want to have a book, not why you want to get rid of something. So I would say the limits on what you have in your library are actually much more about space and budget than anything else. And that you should have a collection development policy that is in keeping with the mission of your institution. So it will be different in different places. That's part of how we operate as a country, as libraries. But really, when you're selecting, you're thinking, not thinking, am I going to get in trouble? Do I disagree with this? All these other issues, but does this work with my collection development policy? Is this something that patrons will be interested in? All sorts of things. Is this supporting the curriculum for everybody? Is this supporting people who may not be talking to me right now, right? You have to think about everybody in your community, not just the loudest people, and not even just the people that you see. Because people may be not coming to the library at all, but they're using your resources. So really thinking about the mission of your institution, I always say should come first.
Thanks, Emily.
And I'll just say so real quickie, that coupled with everything, of course, there's going to be the legal limits on the type of speech. And that goes to the freedom of speech and the type of speech that's even allowed. So of course, if you are truly concerned, like having a meeting or something, or someone use a space or something like that, be sure to talk to your legal counsel, be it the legal counsel of your community, and whoever the legal counsel is that's associated with your library, whatever type of library you have. So that's just my suggestion, because there are legal limits to it. And to remember, it may not, those legal limits and those legal ramifications or parameters may not be what you hope them to be. They may not be what you think, but as librarians, there's a certain level of we are adhering to our mission, we're adhering to our tenets of free speech that we ourselves may not be comfortable with, but we are serving our community. So we have to think of our own community rather than ourselves.
Yeah, I think in particular, we need to think of the community members that we may not see in the library, or the community members who we may not see as our neighbors or in our church. Virtually every community is heterogeneous in some way. And that may not be something that you easily see, but that is something that we need to account for in our collection development policies. And we also want to have items that act as windows and sliding glass doors and those metaphors, right? That allow people to see other folks as human, as part of our community. So that's one of the reasons, of course, why we have diverse collections. I think reaching out to community members, community leaders is an important, one important way of working on that goal.
I think it's very important to have policies, and in addition to having those policies, to work with the legal department within your institutions and to really map out what you are able to do and to write into your policies. But I think our policies need to be airtight. And I think that instead of trying to parse out what we can and cannot do with regards to free speech, because I think that's a very slippery slope. And the American Library Association has stated that there's no legal definition for it. I think we should really focus on what are those protocols and procedures that we're going to put in place to make sure that we have a safe environment, right? What is that code of conduct is going to look like within our respective spaces? Because I know that there's a trend now that's happening in libraries where you're seeing these First Amendment right audits. I don't know if my panelists are, where you have people who are very well abreast on their First Amendment rights, and they will come into the library spaces to try to challenge you. And so I think that we need to, again, start thinking about ways that we can address the conduct, because even in public spaces, there are some things, there are rights that are, people have First Amendment rights in public spaces, but if you have disorderly conduct, you will be arrested. So we have to really think about what we can do as opposed to trying to limit or trying to balance people's First Amendment right. I think if there's any balancing, it's really feeding into this idea that your rights end where the next person's rights began. And we're trying to balance equity for everyone.
That
Right,
goes to the when, not if. And that goes to being proactive. So that goes to speaking now to, when you talk about being airtight, there's going to be holes. We know that. There's going to be somebody who wiggles through. But that goes through you developing, making sure your policies are well thought out. You may have to revamp them. You may not have looked at them in the last 25 years, that you need to look at them again. And that goes to talking to your library board, et cetera, and talking to your legal counsel. Revamp now, be proactive now, and look at your policies now, rather than down the road when you're challenged and now you're scrambling. Try to be as prepared as possible for the win.
I want to go back to something Lesliediana said about, obviously there are things that are illegal that should not be in libraries. One thing that is not illegal is pornography, but I cannot imagine a school library that has pornography on their shelves. I cannot imagine most public libraries or academic libraries or any libraries have pornography on their shelves. But pornography does not equate to something that makes you uncomfortable. I just want to make that very explicit, that there are things that make us uncomfortable. There are things that could be explicit. Those may or may not be defined as pornography. But I think chasing after what is pornography and should pornography be on such and such library shelves, I think that's a complete red herring. So I don't want people to get caught up in definitions of pornography, definitions, especially definitions that say anything explicit or anything detailed should not be allowed. Sometimes those things are really valuable to students or other patrons.
Yeah, I want to follow up. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Emily, go ahead.
I want to follow up on that because I see there's discussion in the chat about pornography and things being explicit. So there's a difference. Actually, I should say that someone has also mentioned that pornography is defined legally. It's not something you can just say like, I think that's pornographic and therefore it is pornographic or obscene. Those have to be decided by a judge. But also when something is about sex, that does not necessarily mean that it is pornographic. You may feel that it makes you, as Dr. Oltmann said, uncomfortable or some other feeling, but that does not, explicitness does not necessarily mean that it's pornographic. If so, there would be many, many books from our romance sections that would have to be removed. So if you want to get into an argument with public librarians, you can go talk about like, what is erotica versus what is romance? There are steamy ratings on those as to how you think about these things. But basically what I'm saying is that these are things that might make you uncomfortable. Someone mentioned All Boys Aren't Blue and genderqueer. I actually want to address those in particular. all boys aren't blue. What George Johnson was trying to say is, this is what happened to me. And I want other people to understand that if it happens to them, they should not be ashamed. And they wanted to say it as clearly as possible, not try to use euphemism when they were describing their sexual assault. It is not an erotic scene. It is about someone being violently assaulted. To say that it's pornographic does not make any sense if you think about what George Johnson is saying in that scene. Genderqueer, Maya is saying, this is how I understood myself. And yes, there are pictures that I was like, whoa, those are surprising pictures. They aren't particularly sexy pictures. They're just kind of there because Maya is expressing itself creatively. I mean, we had the whole discussion about David and Michelangelo, right? Who is making these decisions? Who gets to decide? And yes, graphic narratives make things a little bit different because there are pictures. We need to be prepared to respond to those pictures. But also what these works do is give people vocabulary to describe themselves, to say who they are as human beings in the world. And that's part of the job of growing up, is being able to say, this is me. And if we only focus on the things that we agree with or that we think are good or in some way like that, we're not giving people the tools that they need to say, you know what? This is how I understand what happened to me or who I am. And that is part of the job of learning. And it can be really painful and hard, but we still have to provide those tools to people to be able to do that.
Yeah. And a lot of what I'm hearing from my panelists that have been such amazing, responses to this question, for me can sometimes I can get lost and get overwhelmed. But I think if anything, for that particular question, know what's acceptable where you are. Really be proactive about knowing what is legally right. And to everyone's point, making sure those policies and those things are particularly in place, because it gets very overwhelming trying to battle that as a whole for everything and everybody in all these different spaces. So I really think understanding and knowing where you are, like we talked about the mission of your library or the area, what area is your library, what state, and focusing on those legal ramifications and those particular information that you need to know to speak to your policy is really, really going to be important. So I just wanted to share that because it can be very overwhelming hearing it from that large perspective.
I think it's important to know where that line is, Sophia. I mean, I think it's important to walk right up till your toes touch it. That line's going to be different in different states right now because of some of the state legislation that is in process, but that doesn't mean that we should know where the line is and then take 2 or 3 steps back so we're extra safe and cautious. Our communities need us right now. Our communities need us just like they always have. So we have to find where that line is in our particular state and walk right up to it and be brave.
Education is key, like we always say, really educate yourself and have those, be prepared to speak to those areas that are going to be most challenging at the time.
So believe it or not, we're getting close to the end of our time, and we have to have a little bit of time available at the end of the hour so that we can get folks ready to move into the mini sessions. And so I'm going to pose one last question to our panelists, which, based on the things that we have talked about so far, or maybe there's something that you really wanted to say and we didn't have time to say it. What's the one takeaway you would want to give to our audience? I'm going to call on you on turn, and we're reversing the order from the start. So Sophia, I'm going to start with you. What's the big takeaway for our audience?
I think it would be one of the questions we were going to talk about a little. Our topic was, how do we prepare for challenges that are coming from organizations with a national reach? And I think it's going to be important that all of our organizations work together. We cannot work in silo for the same reasons that we were talking about for all of our library workers, no matter what level that you are. So if our organizations are strong, working together and knowledgeable together, when our workers reach out to us to help for assistance, we have what we need to help them. We cannot work in silos. Too many times I'm hearing different, just silo work. And then what happens is everybody's doing this little piece. So we can't really tackle the big, things that are in the room. So I would say the last thing that if I ever wanted to say or really respond to or work with as a community is that all of our organizations be on one accord, because those other organizations, they're on one accord. Even when they don't know what they're talking about. It happens to listen to a CNN, they were doing the moms, they were challenging and the mothers reading, and the things that she was saying, even the news reporters were like, she's clueless. How has she gotten so far with the challenges and the work they've been doing? And the reason why is because we're not sometimes on one accord, we're working in silos. So if we can work together stronger, we can really help not only what's happened nationally, but we can help our library workers.
Thanks, Sophia. Shannon?
I like to end any talk about book banning and censorship. I like to end by reminding us why we became librarians. It's to serve our communities, it's to get information in the hands of people who want it and need it. And my God, that's a valuable mission. That's a noble purpose and cause. And especially if you can get information in the hands of somebody who is lacking information about who they are, how they see the world. If you can help a kid feel better about themselves, you're a librarian of the year as far as I'm concerned. So I know libraries are facing challenges. I know those challenges are intimidating, overwhelming, and scary. But also remember the great things that libraries do. Remember the great purposes that libraries have, and hold on to that even in tough times.
Thanks, Shannon. Emily?
I'm actually going to pull on that also and say that libraries are one of the best institutions that we have in the world. You can walk into a library, public library, and you don't have to buy anything. There are so few places like that. That's actually why libraries are targeted, right? Because they are places that take everybody and take all comers. School libraries are so important for those kids who show up at 5 o'clock in the morning. My mother was a high school librarian, who need a place to go that's quiet to study. The academic library, what nook and cranny are you in, to do your work with your coffee? There's so few places like that. And that is why libraries are targeted, because they say, we will serve you. That's what we do as librarians.
Thanks, Emily. Lesliediana.
I'm going to speak to my colleagues to say you are not alone. And I think if everyone remembers that, no matter how hard the times will get, and in some communities, they will definitely be harder than others. I have seen it. You are not alone. Even if you feel like it within your community, if you feel like, because you may be in a community that does not hold, within your library, that does not hold that same values as librarianship as you are not alone. So I really, really strongly urge everyone to remember that, internalize it. And all of these organizations that we have talked about, I'm shamelessly going to plug the Freedom to Read Foundation and the Office of Intellectual Freedom, both of which I work with. So I must shamelessly plug them. Please reach out to them. We have resources to help you. So do not at any time think that I don't know what to do, I'm overwhelmed. Well, as soon as you have those feelings, reach out. You will be assisted. You will be helped. Bottom line, you are not alone.
Andrea, bring us home.
One line, we cannot let or allow the demands of a few to suppress the rights of many.
All right, on that note, I just got some chills for all the good words that were shared right now in this panel. We're supposed to stop within a minute of the hour, and so we've done that. I want to thank everyone for your participation. Looking forward to seeing the breakout sessions, and so I turn it back over to the organizers for the next steps.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you to the panel. We are going to quickly exit so people can get to the next set of sessions. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye now. Thanks, Martin. Are you still there? You're muted.
I'm here. I'm here.
Let me stop the recording here, make sure it stopped.